My name is Stella, and I am 36 years old. I sat in the sterile white office of a fertility specialist, the air thick with unspoken hope and medical jargon, as Dr. Hansen delivered the final, crushing verdict. "I'm sorry, Stella," he said, his voice a gentle symphony of professional pity. "But after 3 failed IVF cycles and extensive testing, it's clear that carrying a pregnancy to term is not a viable option for you." The words were a death sentence to a dream I had nurtured for a decade. Across from me, my husband Liam squeezed my hand, his own face a mask of grief. That night, wrapped in the suffocating silence of our home, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I asked my younger sister, Willow, the vibrant, free-spirited artist, to be our surrogate. I thought it was a request born of love and desperation. I had no idea it was the first move in a devastating game of betrayal orchestrated by the 2 people I trusted most in the world. They weren't just helping me build a family. They were systematically planning to replace me in it. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Before I reveal the shocking discovery that exposed their long-hidden affair, hit like and subscribe for more real-life stories about love, betrayal, and the strength it takes to rebuild from the ashes. Before my world imploded, it was, by all accounts, perfect. Liam and I had been married for 12 years, a partnership built on a foundation of college romance and shared dreams. He was a successful architect, his design sleek and modern, a reflection of his own ambitious and charismatic personality. I had a fulfilling career as a landscape designer, creating beautiful, serene gardens for clients across the city. We owned a beautiful home, a renovated mid-century modern with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a garden I had personally designed, my masterpiece of Japanese maples and moss-covered stones. We had a vibrant social life, a solid financial footing, and a deep, comfortable love. The only piece missing was a child. Our journey with infertility had been a long and agonizing one, a silent sorrow that permeated the beautiful life we had built. It was a landscape I couldn't cultivate, a blueprint Liam couldn't design. Each failed treatment, each negative pregnancy test was a small death, chipping away at our hope. Through it all, Liam was my rock. He held me through the hormonal rages of IVF, he administered the painful injections, and he whispered words of encouragement when I was ready to give up. "We're a team," he would say. "We'll get through this no matter what." My sister, Willow, was my emotional anchor. At 30, she was my opposite in every way. Where I was structured and planned, she was spontaneous and artistic. A talented painter, she lived a bohemian lifestyle in a sun-drenched loft downtown, her life a chaotic, beautiful collage of art projects and whirlwind romances. Despite our differences, we were incredibly close. She was the one I called after every failed cycle, her voice a warm, comforting presence on the other end of the line. She listened to my grief, she raged at the unfairness of it all on my behalf, and she always knew how to make me laugh, even through the tears. So, when the doctor delivered the final irreversible news, turning to Willow felt like the most natural thing in the world. I invited her over for dinner, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. Liam and I laid out the situation, our voices trembling with the raw pain of our dashed hopes. "We have one last option," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "One viable embryo left. The doctor says surrogacy is our only real chance." Willow looked from my face to Liam's, her own eyes filling with tears. She didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm with a love that felt as solid and real as the ground beneath my feet. "Of course I'll do it. You're my sister. This baby is meant to be. Let me help you bring him home." The relief was so profound, it felt like I could finally breathe again after years of holding my breath. Liam embraced her, his voice thick with gratitude. My parents were overjoyed, praising Willow's selflessness and celebrating the perfect solution. The next few months were a blur of legal contracts and medical procedures. Willow moved into our guest room to make the process easier, a decision that seemed logical at the time. I took care of her, preparing nutritious meals, giving her vitamin injections, and making sure she was comfortable. It felt like we were a team, 3 people united in a single sacred goal. The transfer was a success. We were pregnant. The first ultrasound, seeing that tiny flickering heartbeat on the screen, was the happiest moment of my life. Liam, Willow, and I stood huddled together, tears streaming down our faces. A perfect, happy little triangle of hope. I was so blinded by my own joy, so grateful for this miracle, that I didn't see the subtle shifts in the dynamic between them. I didn't notice the lingering glances between my husband and my sister when they thought I wasn't looking. I didn't question the late-night whispering sessions they had in the kitchen, which they explained away as Willow's pregnancy anxieties. I didn't think twice when Liam started attending all of Willow's doctor's appointments, insisting that I should save my time off from work for when the baby comes. I saw it all as care, as support, as a beautiful testament to the family we were building. I didn't see it for what it was, a conspiracy. The pregnancy progressed beautifully. Willow glowed, her artist spirit seemingly amplified by the life she was carrying. I threw myself into preparations, designing a nursery that was a serene dream of soft grays and pale yellows, a calm oasis for our long-awaited child. Liam was more involved than I could have ever hoped. He assembled the crib, he painted the walls, and he spent hours researching the safest car seats. His dedication was a balm to my anxious soul. He was going to be the perfect father. The first crack in my perfect world appeared so subtly I almost missed it. I had come home early from a client meeting to find the house empty. Liam was supposed to be working from home, and Willow had a prenatal class. I went into our home office to drop off my bag and noticed Liam's laptop was open. A chat window was visible on the screen. It was with Willow. My heart gave a strange little flutter of unease. I knew I shouldn't look, that it was a violation of his privacy, but an instinct I couldn't ignore compelled me to scroll up. The conversation was mostly logistical, questions about her yoga class, a reminder about a doctor's appointment. But then I saw a line from Liam that made my stomach clench. Just a few more months of this performance, then we can be a real family. A real family? What did that mean? Wasn't that what we were already becoming? Willow's reply was even chilling. I know, it's getting harder to pretend. She watches us all the time. But it will be worth it for him, for us. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. My mind raced, trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe performance meant the pregnancy, the physical toll on Willow. Maybe a real family meant one with the baby finally in her arms. But the secrecy of it, the feeling that I was the she who was watching them, it felt wrong. I confronted Liam that evening, trying to keep my voice casual. "I saw you and Willow were chatting today," I said as we were cleaning up after dinner. His reaction was immediate and defensive. "Were you reading my private messages, Stella?" "The laptop was open. I just saw a few lines. You said something about a performance." He let out a short, sharp laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes.
"Oh, that. Willow was just being dramatic. She feels like she's on display, with everyone in the family fussing over her. She feels like she has to perform the role of the perfect glowing surrogate. You know how she is." It was a plausible explanation. Willow was dramatic, but it didn't feel right. I let it go, telling myself I was being paranoid, my years of infertility and hormonal treatments making me overly sensitive. The baby shower was a lavish affair, hosted by our mother. The house was filled with friends and family, a sea of pastel gifts and joyful anticipation. Willow was the radiant center of attention, accepting congratulations with a serene smile. Liam hovered by her side, a proud father-to-be, his hand often resting on her swollen belly. I watched them from across the room, a strange sense of dislocation washing over me. They looked so natural, so perfect together. I felt like a guest at my own party, a spectator to the creation of my own family. Later, as I was helping my mother clear away the wrapping paper, she sighed contentedly. "You know, darling, this has all worked out for the best. Willow has never been happier, more grounded. This pregnancy has been so good for her. And Liam, I've never seen him look so proud. It's like they were made for this." Her words, meant to be a comfort, landed like a punch to the gut. They were made for this. What about me? Where did I fit into this perfect picture? The day our son, Oliver, was born was the most beautiful and most painful day of my life. The delivery was quick and easy. I was in the room, holding Willow's hand on one side, while Liam held her other. When the doctor placed Oliver in my arms, a tiny, perfect bundle of life, I felt a love so fierce and overwhelming it erased every doubt, every fear. He was mine. He was real. Liam and I wept with joy, our dream finally realized. But even in the midst of that perfect moment, the cracks were spreading. When the nurses came to take Oliver to the nursery, Liam went with them, leaving me alone with my sister. Willow was exhausted, but her eyes were bright. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" she said softly. "He has Liam's eyes." "He has your strength," I said, my heart overflowing with a gratitude so immense it was almost painful. "Thank you, Willow. You've given me everything." She smiled, a strange, sad smile. "I did what I had to do for him." The next day, I was preparing to take Oliver home. Liam was handling the hospital paperwork, and I was packing the baby's bag in Willow's room. I couldn't find the small hand-knit hat that I had made for him. I remembered Willow putting it in her overnight bag. The bag was on the floor by her bed. "Do you mind if I just check your bag for Ollie's hat?" I asked. She was half asleep and just waved a hand in assent. I knelt and unzipped the front pocket, and there, tucked beneath a tube of lip balm and a hair tie, was a key. A single, small brass key. It was a perfect match for the antique lock on Liam's private desk drawer in our home office, the one drawer he had always kept locked, the one he said contained boring old architectural contracts. I felt my blood turn to ice. Why would my sister have the key to my husband's private drawer? I slipped the key into my pocket, my hand trembling so hard I could barely grasp it. My mind was a chaotic storm of denial and a sickening, rising tide of suspicion. It's a coincidence. It's a similar key. There's a perfectly logical explanation. But the instinct that had screamed at me when I saw their chat messages was now a deafening siren. I went through the motions of taking Oliver home, a smile plastered on my face, my heart a frantic, trapped bird in my chest. Liam was the doting father, carefully buckling the car seat, his face a picture of paternal bliss. He seemed not to notice my silence, my tension. Or, if he did, he attributed it to the overwhelming emotions of new motherhood.
That night, after Oliver was asleep in his beautiful, serene nursery and Willow was settled back in the guest room, I waited. I waited until the house was dark and silent, until I could hear the slow, steady rhythm of Liam's breathing from our bed. Then I slipped out and went to the home office. The key from Willow's bag slid into the antique lock of Liam's desk drawer with a soft, perfect click. It wasn't a similar key. It was the key. I took a deep, shuddering breath and pulled the drawer open. It wasn't filled with boring architectural contracts. It was filled with a life I didn't recognize. There were photographs, dozens of them. Liam and Willow. not just on family occasions, but on what were clearly dates. Laughing over dinner at a restaurant I'd never been to, kissing under a pier at a beach we had never visited together, a weekend trip to a cozy cabin, a place he had told me he was going to for a solo architectural retreat. The dates on the back of the photos spanned the last 3 years, the entire time we had been struggling with infertility, the entire time he had been my rock, my support. Beneath the photos was a stack of letters, tied with a silk ribbon. They were from Willow to Liam, written in her flamboyant, artistic script. I untied the ribbon, my hands numb. The words were a testament to a deep, passionate, and long-standing love affair. "My dearest Elle," one began. "Tonight with Stella at her support group felt like a glimpse of what our real life could be. I hate the sneaking around, the lies, but when I'm in your arms, it all feels worth it. She doesn't deserve you. She's too contained, too predictable. She could never love you with the kind of wild, all-consuming fire that I do." Another, dated from just after she had agreed to the surrogacy. "This is the perfect solution, the only solution. We'll have our baby, our family, and once he's here, she'll see. She'll see that you and I and the baby are the real family and she is the outsider. She will have to let you go. It's kinder this way, really. A clean break. And we get everything we've ever wanted." I sank to the floor, the letters fluttering from my hands. The air was gone from my lungs. The beautiful, perfect life I had cherished was a lie. My husband's love, my sister's support, my parents' joy, it was all a performance, a meticulously staged play in which I was the only one who didn't know my role, the inconvenient wife who was about to be gracefully written out of the script. The surrogacy hadn't been an act of love from my sister. It had been a strategic move in a long, calculated campaign to take my place. They weren't giving me a baby. They were creating a biological bridge between themselves, an undeniable link that would eventually be used to push me out completely. I sat there for hours, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, a cold, hard rage beginning to replace the suffocating grief. They had used my deepest pain, my most desperate vulnerability, as a weapon against me. They had turned my dream of motherhood into the instrument of my own destruction. They thought I was weak, that I was the contained, predictable wife who would quietly accept her fate. They had no idea who I was about to become. The next morning, I moved with a strange, chilling clarity. I packed a small bag for myself and a larger one for Oliver. I took the letters, the photos, and the key. Then I went to the nursery. I looked at my beautiful son sleeping peacefully, and my resolve hardened. He was the only innocent in this entire sordid mess. He was mine, and I would protect him. I wrote a short, simple note and left it on Liam's pillow. "I know everything. I have Oliver. Don't try to find us. My lawyer will be in touch." Then I walked out of the house I had helped build, out of the garden I had lovingly tended, and drove away from the wreckage of my life, my son safely buckled in the back seat, the evidence of his parents' betrayal in a box on the seat beside me. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was never, ever going back. I drove for 2 hours. My destination, a small, unassuming hotel in a town where no one knew me. The adrenaline that had fueled my escape began to fade, replaced by a deep, bone-aching exhaustion. I checked into a room under a false name, paying in cash. For the next 48 hours, I did nothing but care for Oliver and think. The rage was still there, a simmering coal in my chest, but it was now tempered by a cold, clear-eyed focus. They had started this war, but I was going to finish it. My first call was to a lawyer, not my usual family lawyer, but a woman named Evelyn Reed, a name I had found through a women's advocacy group. She had a reputation as a fierce, uncompromising divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving deception and hidden assets. I met her in her downtown office, a sleek, minimalist space that radiated competence. I laid out the story, my voice flat and emotionless as I presented the photos, the letters, the key. Evelyn listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she looked at the evidence spread across her conference table, then at me. "This is not a divorce, Ms. Vance. This is a demolition, and we have the dynamite." Her words were a strange comfort. For the first time since discovering the truth, I felt like I had an ally. We spent the next week crafting a strategy. The surrogacy agreement, Evelyn explained, was a legal minefield for them. It explicitly named Liam and me as the intended parents. Willow was the gestational carrier, with no legal parental rights. Liam's name was on the birth certificate, but so was mine, through the legal mechanism of the surrogacy contract. "He has parental rights, yes," Evelyn said, "but his actions, the affair, the conspiracy to defraud you, the emotional distress, give us enormous leverage. We are not going to file for divorce. Not yet. We are going to file for an emergency sole custody order based on the evidence of his and your sister's conspiracy to psychologically manipulate you and create an unstable environment for the child." While Evelyn prepared the legal assault, I made my own moves. I called my parents. They had been leaving frantic, tearful messages on my phone, playing the role of concerned parents whose daughter had unexplainably disappeared with their new grandson. "Where are you, Stella? Liam is beside himself with worry," my mother cried. "I'm safe. Oliver is safe," I said coolly. "I'm sure Liam is worried. He's worried that his perfect plan has just blown up in his face." There was a stunned silence. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the affair, Mom. I know the surrogacy was a lie. I know everything." The conversation ended with my mother stammering denials and my father taking the phone to threaten me with kidnapping charges. I hung up, my hand steady. My next call was to a man named Marcus, a private investigator Evelyn had recommended. "I need you to find out everything you can about my husband and my sister's finances. I suspect they have joint assets I don't know about." 3 days later, Marcus called back with the information. It was worse than I had imagined. Liam and Willow had a joint savings account, opened 2 years ago. They had also co-signed on a lease for a small art studio in Willow's name, a studio I thought she was struggling to afford. But the most damning discovery was a property deed. They had jointly purchased a small plot of land in a remote, scenic area a few hours from the city. The purchase had been made 6 months ago, right after the pregnancy was confirmed. They weren't just planning a life together, they were already building it, with my husband's money behind my back. Armed with this new evidence, Evelyn filed the emergency custody petition. The hearing was scheduled for the next week. Liam and Willow were served the papers at my house, the house that I had fled. According to the process server, they looked like they had seen a ghost. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courthouse feeling a strange mixture of terror and empowerment. Liam and Willow were already there with their lawyer, looking pale and drawn. They refused to look at me. In the courtroom, Evelyn was a force of nature. She presented the evidence with a cold, devastating precision. The letters, the photos, the joint bank accounts, the property deed,
And finally, the surrogacy agreement that explicitly stated their conspiracy to use a child as a means to dissolve my marriage. Liam's lawyer tried to argue that the affair was a separate issue from custody, that Liam was a loving father who deserved 50-50 custody. A loving father, Your Honor, Evelyn countered, who conspired with his sister-in-law to psychologically torment his wife, the child's legal mother, with the express goal of removing her from the child's life? A loving father who co-opted his wife's infertility trauma to create a child with his mistress? That is not love, Your Honor. That is a level of sociopathic manipulation that raises serious questions about his fitness as a parent. The judge, a stern-faced woman who had clearly seen her share of domestic drama, looked at Liam and Willow with an expression of open contempt. She granted me the emergency sole custody order pending a full investigation. Liam was granted supervised visitation, 2 hours a week, at a neutral, court-appointed facility. Willow was ordered to have no contact with me or the child. I walked out of the courthouse with Oliver's safety secured, but the war was far from over. I had won the first battle, but now I had to face the demolition of my marriage and the rebuilding of my life. As I buckled Oliver into his car seat, his small, innocent face, a stark contrast to the ugliness I had just endured, I made a promise to him. I would build him a life of truth and honesty, a life free from the poison of his father's and his aunt's beautiful, devastating lies. The aftermath of the custody hearing was a deafening silence. The court order acted as the shield, protecting me from the frantic calls and manipulative texts that had been my reality. Liam, stripped of his power, attended his supervised visits with Oliver in a sterile, joyless room at the visitation center. I would drop Oliver off with the court monitor, my interactions with Liam brief and devoid of emotion. I saw him not as my husband anymore, but as a stranger who had once worn his face. Willow, as per the court's order, disappeared from my life. She moved out of her loft, and I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had left the city. The art world she had once charmed was small, and the story of her betrayal, which had inevitably leaked through the court proceedings, had made her a pariah. With the immediate threat neutralized, I began the painful process of dismantling my life with Liam. Evelyn filed for divorce, citing infidelity and fraud. We used the evidence of their joint assets, the bank account, the studio, the secret plot of land, to argue for a division of property that was heavily in my favor. Liam's lawyer fought back, but the evidence was too overwhelming. In the end, I got the house free and clear and a significant portion of his retirement assets for compensation for the emotional and financial fraud he had perpetrated. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore, couldn't sleep in the bed we had shared, couldn't work in the garden I had tended with a love that had been based on a lie. I sold it to a young family that filled its quiet, minimalist rooms with the happy chaos of children's laughter, and I never looked back. I bought a small, historic brownstone in a different neighborhood, a place with its own history, a place where I could create new memories.
The most difficult part was navigating my relationship with my parents. They were devastated, not just by the affair, but by the public nature of the implosion. Their perfect family, their perfect daughters, were the subject of gossip in their social circles. They blamed me, of course, not for Liam and Willow's actions, but for my reaction. "Couldn't you have handled this privately, Stella?" my mother asked during one tense phone call. "Did you have to destroy everyone's reputation?" "They destroyed their own reputations, Mom. I just turned on the lights." But over time, even their perspective began to shift. Seeing Willow's life in ruins and Liam's reputation shattered forced them to confront a reality they had long ignored. My sister, their vibrant, artistic child, was broken. My husband, the successful, charismatic man they had adored, was a cheat. Their perfect world had been an illusion, and I had been its primary victim. A year after the divorce was finalized, I was in a place of fragile peace. I had a new home, a thriving business, and most importantly, I had my son. Oliver was a happy, healthy toddler, oblivious to the drama that had preceded his birth. He was my world, my light, the one good thing to come out of all the pain. One day, a letter arrived. It was from Willow. She was living in a small coastal town, painting again and in therapy. The letter was not an excuse or a plea for forgiveness. It was a simple, stark admission of her own brokenness. She wrote, "I was so empty. I thought his love and the baby could fill me up. I was wrong. The only person who can fill that emptiness is me. I hope one day you can find it in your heart not to hate me. I hope my nephew grows up knowing he was born of a great, if misguided, love." I never wrote back, but I kept the letter. It was a reminder that broken people do broken things, and that sometimes the only path to healing is to walk away. My life is quiet now, and for that I am grateful. It is a life built on not grand, perfect dreams, but on small, honest truths. I learned that a family can just be two people, a mother and her son. I learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about presence, about showing up, about telling the truth even when it's ugly. And I learned that the most beautiful gardens are often the ones that grow in the soil of a scorched earth, stronger and more resilient for having survived a fire. Have you ever had to choose between protecting a family secret and speaking your own truth? What did you decide, and how did it change your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about the power of resilience and the courage it takes to rebuild. Remember, you have the right to a life built on truth, not on the beautiful lies of others. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength to plant your own garden, no matter what it takes.